I should have run the moment I realized the door wasn't locked. Steam clung to my skin as I stepped out of the bathroom, the soft fabric of the towel barely keeping me covered, droplets sliding down my arms and onto marble floors that didn't belong to someone like me. The air felt different instantly. He was there, not moving, not speaking, just watching. Tall, dressed in a perfectly tailored black suit like he'd been carved into the shadows of the room itself. "Who are you?" His voice wasn't loud, but it didn't need to be. It filled the space between us, controlled and steady, like he was used to being obeyed without question. My breath caught somewhere in my throat. I tightened the towel instinctively, taking one small step back, but the room didn't feel bigger. It felt smaller, like every inch of it answered to him. I thought this was empty," I said, my voice barely above a whisper, my pulse racing so hard it made my fingers tremble. He didn't react the way I expected. No anger, no shouting, just a slow, measured look that moved from my face to the door behind me, then back again, like he was calculating something I couldn't understand. His silence was worse than anything else. "This isn't a place people walk into by accident," he said after a moment, his tone still calm, still unreadable. I swallowed hard, the reality settling in like cold water. This wasn't just a penthouse. It was his. And whoever he wasn't ordinary. A distant noise broke the tension. Footsteps. Fast. Urgent. My heart stopped for half a second before slamming back to life. They found me. I turned toward the sound instinctively, panic rising, but before I could move, he shifted slightly, just enough to block the door without touching me. He didn't raise his voice, didn't reach for me, but the message was clear. I wasn't leaving. "You're being followed," he said quietly, more statement than question, his eyes sharper now, focused in a way that made my skin prickle. I nodded before I could stop myself, fear tightening my chest. He exhaled once, slow, like he'd just made a decision. The footsteps outside grew louder, closer, voices echoing faintly through the hallway. I could feel the seconds slipping away. I expected him to step aside, to let me go. Instead, he reached for a coat draped over a chair and held it out to me, his movements precise, controlled. "Put this on," he said. My hands hesitated before taking it, the fabric warm, expensive, heavy with something I couldn't name. Protection, maybe, or control. I slipped it over my shoulders, still shaking, still trying to understand what was happening. He stepped closer then, not rushed, not threatening, just certain. Close enough that I could see the faint scar along his jaw, the steady focus in his eyes, the kind of presence that made the world feel like it moved around him instead of the other way around. The noise outside stopped. Silence replaced it, the kind that meant something was about to happen. His gaze held mine for one long second before he spoke again, softer this time, almost like a warning meant only for me. "You walked into the wrong place," he said, his voice low, unshaken. Then his expression shifted, just slightly, just enough to change everything. "But now you're exactly where you need to be." I did not realize I was holding my breath until the silence stretched too long. The hallway outside had gone quiet, but it was not the kind of quiet that meant safety. It was the kind that waited. I clutched the coat tighter around me, the sleeves too long, the fabric swallowing my hands, carrying a faint scent of something clean and sharp that felt completely out of place against the chaos still racing through my chest. He had not moved far, just enough to stand between me and the only exit, his presence calm in a way that made everything else feel louder. "Why are they looking for you?" he asked, his voice even, like he was asking about the weather instead of the men who had been chasing me through rain and traffic less than 10 minutes ago. I shook my head, not because I did not understand the question, but because saying it out loud would make it real. "I did not do anything," I said quickly, the words tumbling over each other. "I was just in the wrong place." His eyes narrowed slightly, not in anger, but in thought, like he was weighing every word I said against something he already knew. "People like that do not chase someone for nothing," he replied. "People like that." The way he said it made my stomach tighten, like he recognized them, like he belonged in the same world they did. A soft click echoed behind him as the door locked automatically, sealing us inside. I flinched at the sound. He noticed. Of course he did. He seemed like the kind of man who noticed everything. "Look at me," he said, not raising his voice, but somehow making it impossible to ignore. I hesitated for half a second before lifting my gaze. His eyes held mine, steady, unreadable, but there was something else there now. Not suspicion. Not exactly. Focus. You ran here without knowing where you were going. He continued, his tone quieter, almost thoughtful. That means you were scared enough to stop thinking. I swallowed, my throat dry. I just needed somewhere safe, I admitted. The truth slipped out before I could stop it. Something shifted in his expression again, subtle but real. Not softer, just decided. He stepped closer, closing the distance between us until I could feel the warmth of him through the cold air of the room. My heart picked up speed instantly, every instinct telling me to step back, but my feet stayed rooted in place. This is not safe, he said, his voice lower now, meant only for me. My stomach dropped. Then why are you keeping me here? The question came out sharper than I intended. For a second, I thought I had crossed a line. But instead of reacting, he tilted his head slightly, studying me like I had just said something interesting. Because out there, he glanced briefly toward the door, where the silence still pressed in like a warning. You are already a target. His gaze returned to mine, steady, unshaken. In here, you are mine to protect. The words settled over me, heavy and impossible to ignore. Not a threat, not a promise. Something in between that I could not quite define. My fingers tightened around the edges of the coat, my pulse loud in my ears. I do not belong to anyone, I said, quieter now, but firm. For the first time, the corner of his mouth moved, not quite a smile, but close enough to unsettle me more than anything else. That is what you think, he replied. Then, as if on cue, a faint vibration came from somewhere in the room. His phone. He did not break eye contact as. He reached for it, glancing at the screen for less than a second before slipping it back into his pocket. Whatever he saw, it confirmed something. They are still downstairs, he said calmly. My chest tightened again. Then I have to go, I whispered, panic rising. He shook his head once. Slow. Final. No, he said. And this time, there was no softness in it at all. Only certainty. Now you stay exactly where I can see you. I did not like the way he said no. It was not loud. It was not threatening. But it did not leave room for anything else. My fingers curled tighter into the sleeves of his coat, the fabric grounding me just enough to keep my voice steady. You cannot just decide that, I said, even though part of me already knew he could. He watched me for a moment, that same calm, unreadable expression settling back into place like a mask he wore too well. I already did, he replied. Simple. Final. Like the conversation had ended before I even started it. I took a small step to the side, testing the space, testing him. His eyes followed instantly. He did not move his feet, but somehow it still felt like I had run into a wall. You are not a prisoner, he added, his tone measured, almost patient. But you are not leaving this floor tonight. My pulse jumped. That sounds exactly like a prisoner, I muttered, more to myself than to him. For a split second, something flickered in his gaze. Not annoyance, not anger, something closer to interest. Like I had surprised him. The silence stretched again, thick and heavy, until a soft vibration echoed through the room. Not his phone this time. Something deeper, built into the walls. His head turned slightly toward the sound, listening in a way that made my stomach twist. They are moving, he said quietly. My breath caught. Moving where? I asked, my voice barely holding together. He did not answer right away. Instead, he walked past me, slow and deliberate, toward the massive windows that overlooked the city. I turned instinctively, watching him instead of the view. He stood there for a second, hands at his sides, completely still, like the entire world outside existed only to confirm whatever he was already thinking. They are not leaving, he said finally. They are. Waiting. The words settled in my chest like a weight. Waiting for me. Panic rose fast this time, sharp and impossible to ignore. Then you have to let me go, I said, stepping closer without thinking. If I stay here, I am putting you in danger too. That made him turn. Slowly. His eyes locked onto mine again, and this time there was no distance in them at all. You assume I am in danger, he said. It was not a question. It was a quiet correction. I stopped mid-step, the realization hitting harder than anything else had so far. Of course he was not afraid. Of course he was not worried. This was his world. Whatever I had run from, he stood above it. The imbalance shifted, just slightly, just enough to make my breath unsteady for a different reason. Then why help me? I asked softer now. Honest. For the first time since I saw him, he did not answer immediately. His gaze dropped, just for a second, to the edge of the coat wrapped around me, then back to my face. Something unreadable passed through his expression. Not hesitation, not doubt, recognition. Because you walked into my space like you belonged there, he said quietly. My chest tightened. That does not make any sense. It does to me, he replied. Another pause. Another silence that felt like it was building towards something I could not see yet. Then, without warning, the lights near the entrance dimmed slightly, reacting to movement outside the door. Both of us turned at the same time. My heart stopped. A shadow passed under the doorframe. Close. Too close. I instinctively stepped back, but his hand lifted just slightly, not touching me, just stopping me. Do not move, he said under his breath. The room felt smaller again, quieter, like the air itself was holding still. I could hear my own heartbeat. Loud, unsteady. And then, right as I thought I might break under the silence, he leaned just a fraction closer, his voice barely above a whisper. They are not here for a random girl, he said. My stomach dropped. So the question is, his eyes locked onto mine, sharper than before. Who are you really? The question hit harder than anything else he had said so far. Who are you really? My mouth opened, but no words came out. Because the truth was not simple. It never had been. I shook my head slowly, my fingers tightening around the edge of the coat like it could anchor me to something real. I told you, I said, but my voice lacked conviction now. I am nobody. His gaze did not change. If anything, it sharpened. He stepped closer again, slow enough to give me time to move away, but I did not. I could not. Nobody does not get chased through half the city, he said quietly. Nobody does not end up on my floor with men waiting downstairs. Each word landed with quiet precision, stripping away the version of the story I had tried to hold on to. I swallowed hard, my heart beating faster for a different reason now. Not just fear. Exposure. You are wrong, I whispered, but it sounded weak even to me. He tilted his head slightly, studying me like I was a puzzle he had already started to solve. Then prove it, he said. The silence stretched between us again, heavier this time, filled with everything I was not saying. I looked toward the door without meaning to, my body reacting before my mind could catch up. His eyes followed the movement instantly. He noticed. Of course he did. You were thinking about running again, he said. Not accusing, just stating a fact. My chest tightened. Would you not? I shot back, a flicker of frustration breaking through the fear. You are standing between me and the only exit. That almost smile appeared again, faint and unreadable. And yet you are still here, he replied. That stopped me. Because he was right. I could have tried. Could have pushed past him, opened the door, taken my chances with whatever waited outside. But I had not moved. Something about him held me in place in a way I did not fully understand. Not force. Not fear alone. Something else. Something quieter. More dangerous. A soft sound came from the hallway again. Not footsteps this time. A voice. Low. Muffled through the door, but close enough to make my pulse spike. I instinctively stepped closer to him before I could stop myself. The realization hit me a second later, and I froze. He noticed that too. His gaze dropped briefly to the space between us, then back to my face, something shifting behind his eyes that I could not name. He did not comment on it. Did not move away. Just stood there, steady, like he had already decided exactly how this would play out. Listen carefully, he said under his breath, his voice quieter than before, controlled but urgent in a way that made my chest tighten. If they come up here, you do not speak. You do not move unless I tell you. My breath caught. Why? I asked, barely audible. His eyes held mine, unwavering. Because the moment they see you, he said, this stops being a mistake. The word sent a chill through me. This stops being a mistake. As if everything that had happened so far could still be undone. As if I was standing on the edge of something I could not come back from. The voice outside faded, footsteps moving away again, but the tension did not leave the room. If anything, it deepened. I searched his face, trying to find something certain, something I could trust. You still have not told me who you are, I said quietly. This time, he did not deflect, did not avoid the question. He held my gaze for one long second before answering. Adrian, he said simply. The name settled between us, heavier than it should have been, like it carried more than just identity, like it meant something in the world outside this room. My heart skipped once. And you? He asked, softer now, but no less focused. I hesitated. just for a second. But he saw it. I knew he did. Lily, I said finally. It was the truth. Just not all of it. His eyes did not leave mine. Lily, he repeated, like he was committing it to memory. Then his expression shifted again, something darker settling beneath the calm. That is not the name they are looking for, he said quietly. My blood ran cold. I had not told him that. I had not told him anything. And yet somehow, he already knew. The words did not just land. They cut through everything I was trying to hold together. My breath caught, sharp and uneven, as I stared at him. You do not know that, I said quickly, but the denial came too fast, too defensive. His expression did not change. That was the worst part. No surprise. No hesitation. Just certainty. I know enough, Adrian replied quietly. My fingers tightened around the coat, my mind racing for something to say, something to fix this, but there was nothing left to hide behind. Not from him. Not anymore. You have no idea what you are talking about. I tried again, softer this time, but even I could hear the crack in my voice. He took another step closer, slow and deliberate, until there was barely any space left between us. I could feel the tension in the air, thick and undeniable, like everything had shifted without warning. Then tell me, he said, his voice lower now, almost calm in a way that made it impossible to ignore. Tell me why they are not leaving. I opened my mouth, closed it again, because the answer was not something I could say out loud, not without changing everything. His gaze dropped for just a second, scanning me in a way that felt different this time. Not assessing, not controlling, noticing. You are shaking, he said quietly. I had not realized it until he said it, but my hands were trembling inside the sleeves of his coat, my breathing uneven, my pulse impossible to steady. I hated that he could see it, hated that he was the only one who could. I am fine, I whispered, even though it was clearly not true. He did not argue, did not call me out. Instead, he reached out, slow enough to give me time to pull away. His fingers brushed lightly against my wrist, just for a second, steadying rather than holding. The contact was brief, controlled, but it grounded me in a way I was not expecting. You are not, he said simply. My breath faltered. I should have stepped back, should have created distance. But I did not. I stayed exactly where I was, caught somewhere between fear and something I could not name yet. A faint sound echoed again from the hallway. Closer this time. A soft knock. Not loud, not aggressive, but deliberate. My entire body went still. Adrian's hand dropped immediately, his focus shifting in an instant. Every trace of that quiet moment disappeared, replaced by something sharper. Controlled. Calculating. Stay behind me, he said, his voice low but firm. This time, I did not argue. I moved without thinking, stepping just slightly behind his shoulder, close enough to feel the steady presence of him in front of me. The knock came. Again. 3 times. Even. Patient. Not the kind of knock that asked for permission. The kind that expected it. Adrian did not rush. Did not hesitate. He walked toward the door with the same measured pace, every step controlled, like he had already decided exactly how this would go. My heart pounded so loud I was sure whoever stood outside could hear it. He reached the door and paused for a fraction of a second, his hand hovering near the handle. Then he turned his head just slightly, enough for me to catch his voice, quiet but unmistakable. No matter what happens, he said, you do not say a word. I nodded, even though he could not see me. The lock clicked. The sound echoed through the room like a countdown reaching 0. And in that moment, I realized something that made my chest tighten all over again. I was no longer trying to leave. I was waiting to see what he would do next. The door opened just enough to reveal a man in a dark suit, his posture straight, his expression controlled in a way that mirrored Adrian's but lacked the same quiet authority. He did not step inside. He did not need to. They are asking about a woman, he said, his voice low, professional, like this was routine. My heart dropped into my stomach. Adrian did not turn fully toward him. He stayed exactly where he was, half blocking the doorway, half shielding me without making it obvious. Describe her, Adrian replied calmly. The man hesitated for a fraction of a second. Mid-20s. Light hair. About 5'6". They say she came in here. My breath caught, but I forced myself to stay still, just like Adrian had told me. I focused on the rhythm of my breathing, slow and quiet, even though every instinct in me was screaming to run. Adrian's tone did not change. And you let them in, he asked. Not accusing. Not raised. Just enough weight behind it to make the other man straighten slightly. No, he said quickly. They are still downstairs. Waiting for permission. Permission. The word echoed in my head, heavy with meaning. This building. This floor. This space. It all answered to him. Adrian finally shifted, just enough to glance back at me for a split second. It was quick, barely noticeable, but it was enough. A silent confirmation. Stay quiet. Stay still. I did not move. I barely breathed. No one comes up, Adrian said, turning his attention back to the man at the door. His voice was calm, but there was something underneath it now. Final. Unquestionable. They can wait as long as they want. The man nodded immediately. Yes, sir. Sir. The words settled into place, confirming what I had already begun to understand. Adrian was not just someone who lived here. He was the reason no one else questioned anything. The door closed softly, the lock clicking back into place with a quiet finality that made the room feel even more sealed off than before. For a second, neither of us moved. The silence returned, heavier than before, but different now. Charged. I let out a breath I did not realize I had been holding, my shoulders dropping slightly as the immediate tension eased, but only slightly. Because nothing was over. Not really. Adrian turned slowly, his gaze finding mine again, sharp and focused in a way that made my chest tighten all over again. They are not going anywhere, he said. I nodded, my voice barely working. Neither am I, apparently. It came out quieter than I intended, but he heard it anyway. Of course he did. He stepped closer again, not rushed, not threatening, just certain. You are here because I allowed it, he said. Not harsh, just truth. I swallowed, meeting his gaze even though it made my pulse spike. And if you change your mind? I asked. The question hung between us for a second. Then something shifted in his expression. Not doubt, not hesitation, something more deliberate. I do not, he said simply. My breath faltered again. There was no arrogance in it. No need to prove anything. Just certainty, the kind that made it impossible to argue with. I looked away first, my mind trying to catch up with everything that had happened in less than an hour. I had run into this place by accident. I had walked into his world without knowing it existed. And now I was standing here, wrapped in his coat, being protected by a man I did not understand at all. You still have not told me why, I said quietly, my voice steadier now, but no less serious. Why you are helping me? He did not answer right away. Instead, his gaze dropped briefly to my hands, still gripping the coat, still trembling just enough to give me away. Then back to my face. Because whoever is looking for you, he said slowly, expects fear. I frowned slightly, confused. And his eyes held mine, steady, unreadable, but there was something deeper there now. Something intentional. I want to see what happens, he said quietly, when they realize you are not afraid anymore. The words settled into my chest, heavy and unfamiliar. Not afraid. I let out a soft breath, almost a laugh, but it did not reach my eyes. You think standing here makes me not afraid? I asked. His expression did not change. No, he replied calmly. I think standing here changes who gets to decide what happens next. My heart skipped once. Because somehow, I believed him. For a moment, I just stood there, trying to understand what he meant. Not afraid. The words echoed in my head, but my body did not agree. My pulse was still too fast, my hands still unsteady inside the sleeves of his coat. And yet, something had shifted. Not outside. Inside. I lifted my gaze back to him, studying his face more carefully this time. The sharp lines. The stillness. The way he did not rush, did not react, did not second-guess anything he said. It was not just confidence. It was control. Complete and absolute. You talk like you already know how this ends, I said quietly. He did not look away. I do, he replied. The certainty in his voice should have unsettled me more than it did. Instead, it grounded something in my chest that had been unraveling since the moment I started running. And how is that? I asked, my voice steadier now. He took a step closer, closing the space again, but this time it felt different. Less like a barrier. More like something intentional. They leave, he said simply. My breath caught. Just like that. I asked, unable to hide the doubt. His gaze sharpened slightly. Not just like that, he corrected. Because I told them to. The words settled into place, heavier than anything else he had said so far. Not arrogance. Authority. The kind that did not need to prove itself. I looked at him for a long second, trying to understand how someone could stand this calm while the rest of the world felt like it was closing in. You really believe that, do not you? I asked. That you can control all of this? He did not answer right away. Instead, he turned slightly, glancing toward the window again, the city lights reflecting faintly in his eyes. I do not control everything, he said finally. But I control what happens here. Here. The word carried weight now. This room. This floor. This space that had somehow become the only place I was not being chased. I exhaled slowly, the tension in my shoulders easing just a fraction. Then what happens to me? The question slipped out before I could stop it. Honest. Unfiltered. His attention returned to me immediately, his gaze steady in a way that made it impossible to look away. That depends, he said, on what you are not telling me. My stomach tightened again. Of course it did. Nothing came without a cost. Not in his world. I looked down for a second, my thoughts racing, weighing what to say, what to keep hidden, what would change everything if I let it out. If I tell you, I said slowly, you are not going to like the answer. He did not react the way I expected. No hesitation. No warning. Just a quiet shift in his expression that felt almost inevitable. That is not your decision to make, he replied. I let out a breath, my chest tightening as the truth pressed closer to the surface. I had spent hours running from it. From them. From everything that had led me here. And now I was standing in front of someone who was not going to let me hide behind half answers. A faint sound echoed again from somewhere deeper in the building. Not close. Not immediate. But enough to remind me that none of this was over. Not yet. I lifted my gaze back to his, my voice quieter now, but more certain. They are not just looking for me, I said. He did not interrupt. Did not move. Just watched. Waiting. They think I took something. I continued, my fingers tightening unconsciously around the coat. Something that does not belong to me. His eyes narrowed slightly, interest sharpening beneath the calm. Did you? He asked. The question landed between us, simple but impossible to ignore. I hesitated. Just for a second. Then I met his gaze fully, the truth finally settling into place. I did not mean to, I said softly. But now, I do not know how to give it back. Silence followed. Not empty. Not uncertain. Heavy with everything that came next. And for the first time since I stepped into his world, I realized this was not just about escaping anymore. It was about what he was going to do once he understood exactly what I had brought into his hands. The silence after my words felt different this time. Not tense. Not uncertain. Heavy. Like something had just shifted into place that could not be undone. Adrian did not look surprised. That was what unsettled me the most. He just watched me, his gaze steady, absorbing every word like he had been expecting this all along. Something, he repeated quietly, like he was testing the weight of it. I nodded once, my throat tight. I did not know what it was when I picked it up, I admitted. I thought it was just a mistake. Something left behind. His eyes narrowed slightly, not in suspicion, but in focus. And now, he asked. I exhaled slowly, my fingers curling tighter into the coat. Now I know it is not. The room felt smaller again, the air heavier, like the truth had taken up space between us. He stepped closer, just enough to lower his voice without losing any of its control. Where is it? The question came fast. Direct. No hesitation. I froze for half a second. Not because I did not want to answer. Because I was deciding if I could trust him with it. With everything that came with it. His gaze did not waver. If they are still downstairs, he continued, quieter now, then whatever you took is important enough that they are not leaving without it. I swallowed hard. He was right. Of course he was right. That was the problem. Slowly, carefully, I reached into the inner fold of the coat, my hand brushing against the hidden pocket I had not even realized was there until now. My fingers closed around something small. Cold. Solid. I pulled it out just enough to see it again. A thin metallic drive. Barely 2 inches long. Simple. Ordinary. Except it was not. Not anymore. Adrian's eyes dropped to it immediately, the shift in his expression almost imperceptible but unmistakable. Recognition. Not shock. Not confusion. Recognition. My chest tightened. You know what this is, I said quietly. It was not a question. He did not answer right away. He reached out slowly, not grabbing, not forcing, just holding his hand open in front of me. Waiting. The choice was mine. I hesitated. Just long enough to feel the weight of the decision pressing down on me. Then I placed it in his hand. The moment his fingers closed around it, something changed. Not in the room. In him. It was subtle, almost invisible, but I felt it. The control was still there. The calm. But beneath it, something sharper. Something more dangerous. He turned the drive slightly between his fingers, studying it like it confirmed something he had already suspected. You did not take something random, he said quietly. My stomach dropped. Then what did I take? I asked, my voice barely holding steady. He lifted his gaze back to mine, and for the first time since I met him, there was no distance in it at all. Just clarity. You walked away with leverage, he said. The word echoed in my head, heavier than anything else. Leverage. Not an object. Not a mistake. Something people did not let go of. My pulse spiked again. I did not want this, I said quickly. I just needed to get away. He stepped closer again, closing the distance in a way that felt deliberate now. Intentional. It does not matter what you wanted, he replied calmly. It matters what you have. The drive rested in his hand, small but suddenly more powerful than anything else in the room. I stared at it, then back at him, the realization settling in deeper with every second. This was not just about them chasing me anymore. This was about something bigger, something I had stepped into without understanding it. What happens now? I asked, my voice quieter than before. His gaze did not leave mine. Not for a second. Now, he said slowly. They are not the only ones who need to know what you are holding. My breath caught. The words landed, heavy and undeniable. Because in that moment, I realized I had not just brought danger into his world. I had just made myself valuable inside it. The word valuable did not feel like safety. It felt like a different kind of danger. My chest tightened as I looked at the small drive in his hand, then back at him, trying to understand what I had just stepped into. That is not a good thing, is it? I asked quietly. Adrian did not answer right away. He turned the drive once more between his fingers, then closed his hand around it like the decision had already been made. It depends, he said finally, on who controls it. My pulse jumped. And right now? I asked. His gaze lifted to mine, steady and unshaken. Right now I do. The certainty in his voice should have scared me. Maybe it did. But beneath that fear, something else settled in its place. Something steadier. Because for the first time since this started, the chaos outside did not feel like it was closing in. It felt contained. I exhaled slowly, my shoulders lowering just a fraction. So what happens to me now? The question came out softer this time. Less panic. More truth. He studied me for a moment, like he was weighing something I could not see. That depends on you, he said. I frowned slightly. On me. He nodded once. You brought something into my world that changes the balance, he continued. That means you are no longer just someone passing through. The words settled heavily in my chest. Not passing through. I looked down at the coat wrapped around me, then back at him. I did not ask for that, I said quietly. No one ever does, he replied. There was no comfort in his tone, just honesty. A faint sound echoed again from the hallway, distant now, moving away instead of closer. The shift was subtle, but I felt it. They were still there. But something had changed. Adrian noticed it too. Of course he did. They are pulling back, he said calmly. My breath caught. Because of you? He did not look away. Because they are being told to, he corrected. The distinction mattered. More than I wanted it to. I stared at him for a long second, the reality of it settling in deeper with every second. He had not raised his voice, had not stepped outside, had not even left the room. And still, everything had shifted. The balance, the control, the outcome. I had spent hours running, trying to stay one step ahead of something I did not understand. And he had changed it all without moving. You really do decide what happens next, I said quietly. It was not a question anymore. He did not deny it. In here, he said, yes. The room felt different now. Not smaller. Not suffocating. Still. Controlled. Like the storm had not disappeared, but it had been pushed back just enough to breathe. I looked at him, really looked at him this time, trying to understand the man I had accidentally walked into. The calm. The certainty. The way he did not hesitate when everything else felt uncertain. And me? I asked again, softer now. What do you decide about me? His gaze held mine, steady, unreadable for a second that stretched longer than it should have. Then something shifted. Not softer. Not warmer. Just certain. You stay, he said. My breath caught. That is not your decision, I said automatically, even though it sounded weaker than before. The corner of his mouth moved slightly again, That almost smile that never quite reached his eyes. It already is, he replied. I should have argued. Should have pushed back. Should have reminded him that I still had a choice. But the truth settled in before the words could form. I had walked into his world by accident. But I was not leaving it the same way. My fingers tightened slightly against the coat, my pulse steadying for the first time since this started. Not because I was safe, but because I understood something I had not before. This was not just about escaping anymore. It was about where I belonged and what came next. I met his gaze fully, no hesitation this time. Then you better be right, I said quietly. His eyes did not leave mine. Not for a second. I am, he replied. And in that moment, I realized something that changed everything. I had run into his world trying to survive. But now, I was about to learn what it meant to stay.